The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host, Jim Mars.
Howdy, this is Jim Mars, your permanent temporary host here on Epic Voyagers. And tonight we're going to have a really interesting program. So tell your friends, call in all your chat buddies, because tonight we have Richard Hoagland on with us. And for those of you who don't know Richard, which I think maybe there might be one out of everybody listening that doesn't know who Richard Hoagland is, he was a former curator of the Museum of Space Science and a former NASA consultant during the Apollo missions, and was the science advisor to Walter Cronkite and CBS News. And he has since then made a name for himself by studying what is euphemistically known as space anomalies. You know, now I love the word anomaly because that's a kind of a scientific term meaning WTF. What is that? You don't really know, so they call it an anomaly. Richard, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, Jim, it's great to be with you.
Well, tonight I want to get to a topic that's causing a lot of comment among a lot of people, and then, of course, the great unwashed who's never even heard of it, and maybe they need to know, and that is the comet Elenin. That's Elenin. They officially, that was named after a Russian astronomer who apparently first encountered this. And is it Leonid Elenin? Is that his first name? Leonin, yeah. Lenin, yeah, Elenin. But of course now it's all over the internet. They're saying it actually stands for Extinction Level Event. Nibiru is near. And yeah, and
sometimes, Jim, human beings can be so tiresome.
Well, no, I'll tell you, Richard, it's like my old 102-year-old grandmother said. She said, people are funnier than anybody.
That's right. We have soap operas.
That's
Look,
right.
This whole Elenin thing has gotten so out of hand and so outrageously, staffed up with fear porn and fear mongering that it really, that's what kind of got me intrigued, because if you look at the actual bare bones data, this thing from the beginning was a wimpy, puny, little nothing, Bergy bit in the model that it was a comet. And it was never going to do anything really interesting. I mean, we had some really spectacular comets come through the inner solar system in the last, couple of decades. There was Hale-Bopp, and there was comet.
Halley's comet. I remember seeing Halley's comet.
Yeah, but Halley's actually, the way it's pronounced, didn't really perform, because we were on the opposite side of the solar system from it when it was going close to the sun. And solar heating is what drives comets. So they project their models. It's going to be this bright on this such and such a day, based on basically how far away the darn thing is from the sun, and secondarily how far away it is from us. Because
right,
things. Go ahead.
I was really disappointed, because I was thinking, wow, Halley's comet. We in Texas we could say Halley's comet. And say, wow, it only comes around every 70 years, something like that, and I'm actually going to get to see it. 75 years.
Last time was here when Mark Twain died. Came the first time when he was born. I mean, there was a whole bunch of mythology around Halley's comet, but it kind of in the media.
It was whippy.
Because people didn't see it.
Hale-Bopp.
Same comet, same outgassing, but it was like 4 or 5 times farther away than it had been in 1910, when it blazed, classic comet image across the sky, people expect that because they have no historical reference.
Well, they've been
now,
watching
Elenin,
Disney cartoons or something.
Yeah, Elenin was.
But hey, Hale Bopp. Now, Hale Bopp to me looked like a comet. That was that was impressive.
Yeah, March of '97, I think, was its closest approach.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, those McNaught was another one which really didn't perform well in the northern hemisphere, but was a absolutely gangbuster dynamite daylight comet seen right next to the sun in broad daylight at high noon.
Wow.
And we missed it because it was on an orbit that took it far south of us, so it could only be seen from the southern hemisphere. Australia, South America, Africa got a great view of McNaught.
They had a good view at Terra del Fuego, right?
Yep. Anyway, so Elenin starts out as this wimpy little nothing. And I'm watching this building tsunami, this wave, this crescendo of absolute driven fear porn about this nothing object all over the internet. I mean, there must be 1,000 YouTube videos posted on Elenin alone every single day. Mm-hmm. Think of the amount of money, the manpower, the time, people obsessing, sitting in front of webcams all over the world, writing and drawing and looking into the webcam and sticking out their tongues and talking about the death of the human race at the hands of Elenin. It's nuts.
But isn't there some oddities, though, about Elenin?
Well, but I'm trying to do this in a linear process. So that's what really got me intrigued.
Okay.
Because just like we don't do UFOs, normally at Enterprise we don't do comets. I mean, there are like 30 or 40 comets now somewhere around the inner solar system being tracked by various spacecraft and space cameras, and you don't hear anything about all those other bodies, right? Why this little nothing called Elenin? Well, I got really intrigued, and so I started digging into the background of Elenin and who discovered it, and I discovered immediately there was this weird controversy over the guy who found the comet. I mean, what? Finding a comet in the amateur astronomy world is kind of your ticket to fame.
Oh, that's a Pulitzer Prize of amateurs.
Well, yeah, because for one thing, you get to do something that's really cool.
Right. And you get your name on it.
And then you get your name on it. Exactly. Yeah. And everybody who does not have an ego. I mean, scientists has huge egos. There used to be the joke going around that, one guy rushed into a NASA office, years ago and said, "Oh, you just here? We just missed this incredible mission. The budget was cut by Congress." And the guy behind the desk says, "What mission?" And the first guy says, "Well, the mission to fly by Carl Sagan's ego. It's the biggest egosphere in the solar system."
Hey, well, listen, I should have seen it first and named it, and then think about that. They could say Mars is approaching the Earth.
Comet, yes, wow.
Mars is approaching the Earth.
Yep. No, it would have been cool. So anyway,
right,
so I start looking, and besides the weird coincidences all around Elenin's name, and this guy Lenin Elenin, who is a Russian, he's not an astronomer. Astronomy is his avocation, it's his hobby. He's an amateur astronomer, and what he does is he rents time, like another amateur I'm going to talk about later in the show, on a global network of very high-end, very professional, computer-run telescopes all over the world.
Does that cost money?
Yeah, I think it's called Go to Rent Scope or something like that. Anyway, they've got stations in Australia. They've got stations in Spain. They've got stations in the United States. I think they're looking for one in the Far East now.
But don't you have to pay money? Don't you have to pay money to get on that?
You basically rent.
Right.
Now, what good does it do you to rent a high-end, expensive telescope if you don't know what the hell you're doing?
Right.
So there aren't very many people in the whole world, Jim, who have the smarts, the expertise, the background, the variety of skills required to operate a professional-level telescope halfway around the world via the Internet, get it to do specific things like take images through various filters, which is not trivial. You have to compensate for light and for humidity and the local wind conditions and a whole bunch of, how close you are to cities. You have to select the right filters. You have to have exposure. The telescope can't be tracking the stars because Elenin, like all other bodies, is sailing around the sun under solar gravity. So the movement of the comet, even in a few-second exposure, will be different than the movement of the background stars. So the telescope has to be programmed to track the comet and not the rotation of the Earth, i.e. the stars themselves. So, I mean, this gets more and more and more complex to the point where there aren't very many people all over the planet can actually even photograph Elenin yet.
So what you're telling me is that you have to know what you're looking for before you go looking for it.
Well, in the case of Elenin, I am damn well convinced, dollars to Navy beans, that Leonid or Leonine Elenin is a plant. He's part of an incredibly interesting story, a script which has been handed to us around this unique object. And Jim, we'll talk about who they might be in a minute, they knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. They reached out to this Russian national, Leonin Elenin, to get him to rent time on a telescope half a world away here in New Mexico on the pre-dawn hours of December 10th, 2010. And Leonin Elenin, with his computer located there in Moscow in his apartment, was able to remotely, by remote control, robotic control, take 4 CCD images. That's the electronic equivalent of a photograph. Mm-hmm. Digital images of the sky. And on those images, he had 4 different shots of Elenin, which just happened to be at Discovery that night, in the Discovery moment, plus 19.5 magnitude. And 19.5 is a hugely significant number in physics, the real physics, which have been suppressed from all the rest of us for hundreds of years, if not even longer. As soon as I saw that number, Jim, as soon as I saw that number, I said, this is not an accident. The fear porn has a purpose. Elenin itself has to be something really special. And so I went looking through the rest of the numbers associated with the comet, with the object. You know, its orbit, its period of passage around the sun, its what angle it is to the Earth's orbit, the closest approach dates to the Earth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I found overwhelming 19.5 through all those numbers. So the odds now against this being accidental, being just a random comet, is literally billions and billions, as Carl would say, to 1. It's artificial. Elenin is artificial. What it's here to do, I haven't a clue yet, because we have to follow the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Artificial. In other words, by some other, it's not ours.
It
so
was
it's somebody,
sent by someone.
Someone, but not us. But not us.
But hang on. If this whole thing is a play, a very clever play, the secret space program has the technology to do this. Mm-hmm. You can make an orbit look any way you want if you have anti-gravity, which they do. They've had for the last 60, 70 years, developed in secret after World War II. Huge databases exist on this technology. You look at the work of Dr. Joseph Farrell, you look at Rick Dolan's work, you look at our work, you look at, there's a guy named Mike Surratt, I think, who is an insider, and he goes around the country talking about the secret space program technology, which has been, again, photographed by amateurs around places like Area 51 and other secret bases. So there's a huge database that a secret space program, not using rockets, which is why the shuttle is now history, but using real space drives, anti-gravity, exists. And some of it is under our control, meaning human beings on Earth, the Black Ops guys, Lockheed Martin, secret societies, the Illuminati, you name it, that's the group that has the human anti-gravity real spaceships. There's another group out in space. Dolan and I call them the breakaways, which is the Fourth Reich, Jim. That's where they're headquartered. And they're trying to make us another colony again, 70 years after the war so-called ended. They, of course, have been developing in secret separately in what Dolan calls a breakaway civilization. This separate human conglomeration of guys and gals and people doing amazing stuff with super technology and physics, the hyperdimensional physics that I've been discussing for years and years and years. Those guys now, according to the dots, want to take back control of Earth. And there's a secret war going on. That's what really was behind 9/11 and how those buildings were brought down. not by any conventional technology, but by this super high-tech torsion field HD physics technology, some of which we have, the Black Ops guys, and a lot of which the breakaways have, and they're using it to threatening us guys, and it gets very messy after that. Then you've got real aliens, real ETs who are kind of running around looking at all this, watching it all come to a head, and saying, oh, isn't that interesting, and taking field notes for their umpteen PhDs on some god-awful planet at the other end of the galaxy. Then you have to ask the question, with all these various players, who could have sent us Elenin to fulfill a specific mission which is embodied in all of these hyperdimensional numbers? It's like the overwhelming message of Elenin is HD physics is real, and you guys have to figure it out or you're not going to save your damn planet while there's still time. That's a freedom message, Jim. That's an opening. This is how things really work, and you have been lied to all these years. And that's without it ever doing anything yet, and I have a feeling it's going to do some interesting things.
Well, you know what? I'm still trying to keep my skepticism. However, I myself have spoken to a Navy commander who told me about his trips to Venus. So, as part of the space mission, but of course, nobody. How many people in Congress do you think knows about that?
Maybe 2 or 3 tops.
Handful
and
at
if
most.
You were asking me, if you put sodium pentothal and I was forced to tell who I think it would probably change every other Thursday, because what we seem to live in, this is why Dolan's term is so interesting. We are living in 2 worlds, 2 realities simultaneously. And the part where they overlap, where one group really knows about the other group, is very, very small.
Yeah.
It's like this is a separate civilization, an alien civilization that happens to have agents in our midst because they're obviously human, so we'll never see them. I mean, at one point I was asking myself, I wonder if all the TSA security, all the pat-downs, all the machines, all the scanners in every airport is to try to find the breakaway humans and arrest them so they don't have more agents running around that they can't keep track of. I mean, how else would you do it and not tell us what's really going on? As you begin to spin this scenario out, more and more of the outrageous things currently going on around this planet start to make some sense.
That's true.
Because you got to have an answer that's big enough and far out enough to encompass the weird real reality that's being suppressed. At least that's our take and our approach and our analysis as of this moment.
And if you get someone who is in a position of power and or authority, and you're afraid they might spill the beans, then you simply bring them in and let them know that this could cause total disruption, and they'd have the lives of millions on their conscience, and so you have to keep quiet, and they probably will.
Well, of course. I mean, look, John Chancellor, who was my old colleague at NBC when I was at CBS, he was an anchorman for the NBC Nightly News after Huntley and Brinkley left the show. John Chancellor once had an incredibly hot story right after Kennedy was assassinated on the Lyndon Johnson administration. And he was going to go on the air on NBC that night, nationwide, and break the story. Lyndon Johnson personally got wind of this, personally called him up, and after a couple-hour conversation, John Chancellor did not break the story.
Right.
It used to be that all you had to do was to be the president to get a journalist to shut up. Now that works sometimes, and it doesn't work some other times. I mean, look at Nixon and the whole what's we call it? The something papers, the Pentagon
papers.
That Daniel Ellsberg released.
Yeah.
They weren't able to work their magic on a guy like Ellsberg because he was a radicalized activist. And he had the bit in his teeth, and he had God in his sights, and he was going to deliver the truth regardless. But for people in the system, like a John Chancellor, that conversation with Johnson worked. Now, did he cajole him? Did he honey him? Did he promise him something, or did he just threaten him? Doesn't matter. John Chancellor shut up. That level of pressure brought to people who are nowhere near John Chancellor's position of authority, head of the nightly news on NBC. Can you imagine what just ordinary folks do when they're confronted by this kind of pressure? Whether it's seduction, There might be some money appear in your bank account if you just kind of forget about this.
Really?
I mean, it doesn't take a threat. It just takes, they got more money than God because what? They make it.
Well,
They don't have to worry about money.
Yeah, that's right. They need more. They just print some more.
And that's why we're in the terrible trouble we are, because they've been doing this like money was going to go out of style, because in their view, Jim, these people think money's going to go out of style, that the end of the world is coming and they're going to get ready and they're going to get theirs. And they've been building these big underground dumb bases, as they're called. Dumb.
Deep underground military bases.
As part of the get ready for the big show end. So there is a psychosis already there on the part of the elites. That something coming in the sky that's artificial only comes to bring bad news. And the good news is it's probably bad news for them and good news for all the rest of us. And how can I say that? Because the numbers of the ultimate key to freedom, which is hyperdimensional physics, are splashed all over this object even before it gets here.
So, what do you expect is going to happen once it gets there?
I didn't write this script. How the hell do I know?
I know. It's an amazing thing. Well,
Look,
I
I'm just
think
trying to use science to make some modest predictions. One thing we can say with certainty is it's artificial. Now, as soon as you say that, you open the door to a million possibilities. Why? Because artificial things, i.e. sentience, intelligence, even if it's in robotic form. I have a suspicion, just kind of based on just a feeling, that this thing does not have people in it. It is an AI. It's an artificial intelligence. It's robotic, and I think that the JPL page is actually trying to tip that off by their posting this very bizarre producer of all their ephemerides, who is a guy named Automatic. Do you know what Automatic is, Jim?
it sounds like automatic to me.
It's a pun, but it's also a code name for a video game currently out there where robots come and save human beings on the earth. It's an interactive video game, and Automatic is the hero. He's a little robot that saves humanity. So you begin to look at the various levels of this, and nothing about it stands still except the thing is artificial. Now, of course, the latest propaganda is, it's dissolved, it's gone away, it disintegrated, it blew up, the good guys took it out. I mean, there's all kinds of nonsense on the net now about Elenin disappearing. But it hasn't. How do we know that? Because another, frankly, I think even sharper and smarter amateur named Francis Walsh, who's in Texas, good old Texan, Jim, who is using a robotic telescope on the other side of the world in Australia via the computer. He took the other night, after all the hoopla about, Elenin's been destroyed, it's disappeared, it's broken up. After that nonsense appeared all over the internet, foisted by certain amateur societies who obviously are bought and paid shills of NASA and the government, this independent guy, an independent Texan, he takes a set of images, puts them up on YouTube, and as of my last looking at his website, in fact, I can go do that now, he has got over 33,000 views, most of which came because I posted his data prominently on my Facebook pages, and then from then the count just shot through the roof. The reason Francis' data is so crucial is because a week after Elenin was supposed to have disappeared, he photographed it as one object through different filters, showing different geometries around Elenin, the object itself, with a tail. Exactly where the JPL ephemeris predicted it had to be if it was staying the course, not deviating, not breaking up, not slowing down, not doing any of the other kooky, nonsensical things that are being claimed in all this fear porn all over the net. So this independent Texan has proven that all the lies in Elenin are lies, and we're now going to have to wait a few weeks, 3 weeks, until Elenin moves into the morning skies before dawn for us in the Northern Hemisphere. Then we're going to have all kinds of photographs of Elenin, and it's in that window, that first and second week in October, Jim, that something really cool and amazing could happen with Elenin, because in terms of the symbology embodied in its orbit and trajectory and its various hitting its marks in terms of alignments with planets and the sun, and key dates and times on Earth, that 2 weeks in October could be when all hell, figuratively and symbolically, could break loose, because that's when Elenin could do something really spectacular and nail all the symbology shut with one amazing display.
Well, you
if I was
know,
writing the script.
right. Well, you know, I've thought, and so have other UFO researchers, that the decision's not going to be up to us. It's going to be up to somebody else. All they got to do is just reveal themselves, and everything will change, right?
Depending upon what scenario you construct around Elenin, the artificial object, and the fact that it's bristling with HD physics tells me its mission is the physics. Well, what is one scenario that has been kind of brought to the fore about how the world might end at the end of the Mayan calendar? Worst case scenario?
Oh, well, you know, it goes from everything from giant tsunamis and earthquakes and the whole world blowing up to just simply a change of consciousness.
Well, but what's the big bad guy out there that a large part of the majority are saying is going to be the way the calendar ends and we are done in? It's by the sun.
The sun.
Yeah, the sun.
And by the way, wasn't there supposed to be a lot of really terrific solar flares just over the past few weeks? But it really hadn't happened, has it?
That's right. Suppose Elenin's mission is to quiet the sun.
Yeah, exactly. That's a real interesting.
Physics.
Yeah.
Now think about this. Up until a few days ago, actually it was the night of August 19th, the day that I was supposed to be with George Norrie on Coast here in Albuquerque in the studio, and I was so exhausted from our trip to England and my measuring of the monuments there that I literally conked out. I couldn't have raised my voice to croak, let alone do 3 or 4 hours on Coast that night, so Robin carried on in my stead. Well, that very night, one of the NASA spacecraft, Stereo B, which is one of these solar telescopes in space, trailing around behind the Earth in its orbit, looking across the sun at the other spacecraft, Stereo A, which is about 90 degrees ahead of the Earth in its orbit. This pair of observatory satellites have been gathering really cool three-dimensional data on the sun, flares, CMEs, prominences, all kinds of stuff coming off the surface that will lead, hopefully someday, to an understanding of the physics of why the sun is doing what it's doing. You can't have good science without good data, good observations.
Right.
So, on the 19th, Elenin, in its orbit around the sun, comes into the field of view of one of the high-res cameras on the Stereo B spacecraft, and takes a series of frames put together and posted by Leonid Elenin himself as a movie. And on the film, it's actually, digital video.
Yes.
On this video, you can see as a CME strikes out from the sun, a coronal mass ejection, a lot of super hot plasma squirted out by the sun by various physical processes that are not understood currently. As that tongue of plasma licks out from the sun and leaps off into space, it passes across where Elenin is, and suddenly, like watching a dark room lit object with cigarette smoke blown past it, you see this glimmering, shimmering tetrahedral shield suddenly pop into place around Elenin.